Amazing cleaning lady exposes hidden truth to millionaire. What happens next will inspire you. Maria tightened her grip on the duster, her heart racing as she stepped into the sprawling estate of Jonathan Welling. The marble floors gleamed, echoing the kind of life she had come to recognize only from a distance, one of luxury, privilege, and the heavy weight of social hierarchy. Each crack in the ornate woodwork seemed to taunt her, a reminder of her place in the world as just a cleaning lady, while Jonathan spent his days circling a boardroom table filled with other millionaires. She swallowed her unease. Leading her life on a threadbare budget, Maria pushed past the doubts swirling in her mind. What if today was different? With each sweep of her duster through the opulent rooms, the contrast between their worlds grew unbearable. Her life was filled with dirty dishes, laundry loads, and endless sacrifices. She worried constantly about school bills, the price of groceries, and how to keep her children motivated in a world that rarely smiled at them. How easy it would be to succumb to envy, to resent the life Jonathan had. But Maria had learned resilience from the ground up. She couldn't risk letting the disparity crush her spirit. Yet it loomed over her like a storm cloud, ever present. One afternoon, while cleaning the attic dusty and forgotten, Maria stumbled upon an old journal hidden beneath a tattered quilt. Curiosity piqued, she wiped away the grime and quietly opened it, her heart thumping with each page turned. Jonathan's pen thoughts echoed with vulnerability and loneliness. The insights revealed a man struggling under the weight of family legacy and corporate expectations. The riches he amassed seemed like chains instead of treasures. With every line, her heart ached not for jealousy but sympathy. She too understood the burden of unmet expectations. Yet here she was, toiling away for her children's future. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Maria closed the journal, a sense of urgency flared within her. The weight of Jonathan's unspoken turmoil mirrored her own family's struggles. She heard hushed conversations below the chaos of an impending crisis in his business. Would he drown under the pressure, trapped in a gilded cage she could hardly comprehend? Struggling with her own fears of inadequacy, Maria hesitated. What could a cleaning lady possibly offer the crisis of a millionaire? The thought flitted away like autumn leaves. She resolved to confront him, even if the odds were stacked against her. Her breaths came short and irregular as she approached his sprawling office, each echo of her footfalls amplifying the tension in her chest. There he sat, brooding like a thunderstorm before a downpour. Her heart raced with determination as she prepared to open the floodgates. Maria felt the walls close in, her doubts mounting. Would he hear her? Would he care? Would her voice, so small and insignificant, even reach him? The stakes rose higher than she had ever imagined. Their worlds clashed in this moment. Two lives filled with struggle, and yet shaped by vastly different circumstances. It was now or never. As she steeled herself, the question lingered, heavy and unresolved. Could she reach his heart before the storm gathered, ready to break both of them? Maria stood at the threshold of Jonathan's office, her pulse thundering like a drum against her ribcage. An invisible chasm separated them. Yet here she was, contemplating crossing it. In all her years of scraping by, she had fought against the currents of despair and uncertainty. But this moment felt larger than herself, a pivotal point where she had the chance to reach out and perhaps change their destinies. As she entered, the room felt cavernous, shadows playing tricks on her mind. Jonathan lifted his gaze, brief surprise flickering across his features. She could see the weariness etched beneath his polished exterior. A man caught in a storm he could not control. A fleeting instinct told her to turn back, to retreat into the safety of her mundane existence. Yet she held firm. Jonathan, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. I found something in the attic. His interest piqued, but his eyes clouded with disbelief. Behind the designer suit lay a man facing an existential crisis. She could read that much from the sharp lines of tension on his face. What could you possibly have to say that would matter? His tone dripped with skepticism, and for a fraction of a second, doubt crept back into her mind. Who was she really? Just a cleaning lady in a world of wealth and privilege. She inhaled deeply, summoning the courage that had helped propel her through harrowing days. I found your journal, she confessed, watching as a flicker of alarm crossed his features. She continued, your thoughts are raw, vulnerable. You're not alone in your struggles. The words flowed like water from a cracked dam, each one an attempt to connect rather than differentiate. His brows furrowed, eyes narrowing. You invaded my privacy. The accusation felt like a punch, attempting to sever the fragile thread connecting them. But Maria pressed on undeterred. I've lived a life filled with invisible battles too, Jonathan. I understand pressure. You carry the weight of expectations as I carry my own. There was fire in her words now, igniting an awareness within her. She was not just a passive observer. She had fought her way through the years. His demeanor softened, a momentary flicker of vulnerability crossing his face. What makes you think I want empathy from someone like you? His challenge was sharp but tinged with intrigue. Because behind every facade is a human being struggling. We're more alike than you realize, she said, the truth surging to the forefront of her thoughts. She felt liberated, her position shifting from subordinate to an equal who dared to see him really see him. You bear the burden of your family legacy, just as I bear mine. You fear failure just as I do every single day. He leaned back, momentarily stunned, as if her words had peeled back the layers formed by wealth and expectations. In this fleeting exchange, Maria saw the potential for growth, not just for herself but for him too. The room seemed to hum with unspoken possibilities. But a distance remained, a flicker of resistance still sat in the air. A nuanced barrier that would take more than words to dismantle. What do you want from this? He asked quietly, almost painfully aware of the implications of their newfound connection. Maria paused, considering her own desires. She didn't just want to comfort him. She craved validation in her own journey as well. To show you that understanding can be a bridge, not a wall. That your weight is not meant to be faced alone. But we can't find that without opening up about what truly burdens us. In that moment, the world outside faded as their shared realities drew closer, forming an unsteady alliance. Yet, as Jonathan's eyes searched hers for answers, uncertainty gnawed at her. Was she reaching for too much? The gravity of her pursuit ignited a deeper ambition within her, one that threatened to unravel the very fabric of her life as she had known it. But could she really step into a role that challenged the status quo of both of their lives? Maybe it's time to discover together, she urged. But the question loomed, would he take the leap or would fear keep them both bound to their pasts? As his silence lingered, the storm clouds of uncertainty gathered around them anew, prompting Maria to wonder just how far she was willing to go to unravel both of their truths. The weight of Jonathan's silence felt insurmountable, and Maria's determination began to waver. Each heartbeat echoed her internal conflict. Could she truly dismantle the walls that separated them? There was something undeniably magnetic about his hesitation, a shared fear contorting the air between them. Look, she said, her voice softening, I know this is unconventional, but maybe this conversation could ignite something new. A new beginning. Maria watched as a flicker of hope ignited in his eyes, one she was afraid to acknowledge openly. It felt too fragile to rely on. Jonathan's expression shifted, and she could almost see the gears turning in his mind. And what do you propose? A collaboration? The doubt laced his voice still, yet curiosity began to crack through his hardened exterior. Yes, she asserted, finding a strength within herself she didn't realize was there. Think about what that could look like. You're stuck in a cycle of expectations, and I'm fighting my own battles. Maybe, just maybe, by working together we can free each other's minds. The notion was audacious. Faced with the enormity of what she had just suggested, Maria felt a tingling apprehension. Was she ready to extract herself from the roles life had drawn around her? She studied Jonathan, intrigued by his internal struggle, the glimmer of the man beneath the polished surface that spoke of affluence and privilege. What if I could help you see your life differently? She continued, her heart racing. You'd gain insight from someone who understands what it means to rise against the tide. Perhaps facing this together would create a pathway you never anticipated. He shifted in his chair, wrestling with the tension that encased them. Maria wondered if he felt the same thrill. His sharp, analytical mind undoubtedly considered the risks, But as she spoke, she saw sparks of connection, the possibility of veritable transformation. For a brief moment, he was still, eyes locked on hers, contemplating her words as if she stood at the precipice of something profound. Then, with a sudden flicker of resolve, he leaned forward. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier than before. "Let us explore this idea. But I'm warning you, I'm not easy to work with." A rush of exhilaration surged through Maria. She had pierced the barrier, and now a floodgate of possibilities lay open. "Then we'll have our work cut out for us," she replied light-heartedly. Yet her insides churned with anticipation. Yet, in the back of her mind, a fresh anxiety began to sprout. This was uncharted territory. As exhilaration and dread collided, Maria whispered to herself the two words that embodied hope: step forward. She'd taken the first step, but now she wondered what legacy would emerge from this leap. Her lifelong reality of being an observer faded, replaced with visions of becoming a player in a game that had once seemed unreachable. Perhaps riding the currents of Jonathan's life would challenge her to confront her own denial. The barriers she'd set in place without recognizing the choice to dismantle them. "What's next, then?" Jonathan asked, his tone serious now, but she detected an underlying excitement lurking just beneath the surface of his words. "Well, let us start by looking at your journal again," Maria suggested, emboldened by his agreement. "We must understand the storm inside you before we can change the landscape." This was not merely about helping Jonathan anymore. It had morphed into a journey of self-discovery for both of them. As they began to delve into the complexity of Jonathan's writings, Maria felt an awakening within herself too. Each passage she read revealed glimpses of shared struggles that bound them. With each revelation, the threads of her own burdens unraveled slightly, setting pace for profound transformation. Yet, just as the atmosphere began to shift towards a profound understanding, a sharp knock on the door interrupted their moment, a reminder that the outside world loomed large, and not all challenges were ready to be dismissed. The time had come to face what awaited them both. Maria realized, a new wave of tension pulsating in her chest. The deeper she ventured into Jonathan's world, the more uncertain her foothold in her own seemed to become. Would she emerge resilient, or would the very act of crossing these thresholds shatter the fragile foundation she had struggled to create? Maria stood up, her heart racing as she moved toward the door. The knock had been both an intrusion and a harbinger, a jarring reminder that their moment of tranquility was fleeting. She glanced back at Jonathan, whose features were illuminated by an incandescent mixture of worry and curiosity. What awaited on the other side of that door? "Are you ready?" she asked, more to steady her own nerves than to gauge his. Jonathan nodded, though a flicker of anxiety darted across his face. "I suppose we have to confront whatever this is together." His words held a weight she hadn't anticipated, reinforcing the entwined paths they were now charting. With a deep breath, Maria grasped the doorknob, feeling its cold metallic surface penetrate the warmth of the moment they had crafted. As she swung the door open, the dynamic shifted. The person standing there was a stark contrast to the intimacy they had just begun to cultivate. It was a stern-looking man in a suit, with an aura that screamed authority. "Jonathan," the man said flatly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." Maria felt the air thicken with tension. The interloper's presence was a stark reminder of the outside world's demands pulling at Jonathan's conscience, and revealing cracks in the fragile progress they had made. She suddenly felt vulnerable, as if the defenses she had just begun to dismantle were being thrown back up around her. "Not here," Jonathan replied, a firmness in his voice that was new to Maria. She could see the turmoil beneath his composed surface. "This isn't the time or place." The man glanced at Maria with a subtle, dismissive evaluation. "This involves more than just you, Jonathan. We both know the stakes." Fury bubbled within Maria. How dare this stranger attempt to dismantle the fragile trust they were forging? But deep down she recognized that the man was right. The stakes were indeed high, not just for Jonathan, but for herself as well. Her vulnerability lay in the possibility that Jonathan might retreat to the familiar path of obligation, leaving her to grapple alone with her own recalcitrance. "Can you give us a moment?" Maria interjected, surprising even herself with her boldness. Both men turned to her, Jonathan with uncertainty, the man with a hint of incredulity. Jonathan regarded her intently, as if he were searching for clarity in her conviction. Would he follow her lead? Would he trust that this was a moment of potential growth? Look, I know you have a lot going on, Maria continued, her voice steadying, but we're in the middle of a critical conversation here. And I believe that what we're discussing is just as important as whatever you want. The contrast of the two men reflected the tumult of emotions swirling within her. Jonathan's complex interior life was unfolding in delicate layers. Yet here stood an embodiment of duty and expectation, an adversary to her burgeoning hope. The suit adjuster huffed, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned. We don't have time for this, he countered, his impatience palpable. But in that tension-filled moment, Maria sensed Jonathan wresting control from this intrusion. Just give me a minute, Jonathan said, an edge of determination in his voice. Whatever it is, it can wait. The man hesitated, the provocation hanging in the air. For a moment Maria held her breath, feeling as if they were standing on the precipice of something momentous. Very well, the man replied curtly, backing down, but not without leaving an unsettling energy. I'll be waiting outside. As the door clicked shut behind him, Jonathan released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. I didn't want to face that, he admitted, his tone wavering. Yet it was laced with a flicker of relief. He had chosen her moment of truth over the unyielding demands of the world. Why are you feeling so compelled to step into their shadows? Maria challenged softly, sensing the perils that lured him back. This is our opportunity. His eyes narrowed with conflict. But what if no more what ifs, she interrupted, whispering fiercely with resolve. What if we let those doubts fuel our next steps instead of defining them? Jonathan's gaze shifted, absorbing her words like a sponge, seeking the resonance between them. There was something about this crossroads that felt more than just a professional challenge. It was an exploration into their respective identities, the constructs that they had both crafted for safety. What if we turn those expectations into fuel for our own journey? Jonathan finally asked, a spark igniting in his voice. She could almost see the light dawning behind his eyes, the realization beginning to break through. Yes, she affirmed, emboldened by his shift in perspective. This is our chance to shape a narrative that belongs only to us. As the room swirled with possibilities, Maria sensed the adjustment within herself too, a dawning clarity. She could feel both their paths intertwining, converging at this moment of resistance, carving out a new future amid doubt. But as they paused to reflect, the distant hum of the outside world murmured ominously, a reminder that the storm of expectation would not remain quiet for long. Would they seize the momentum together? Or would their fragile alliance crumble under the pressure of impending obligations? The question hung palpably in the air, a stark reminder that the next choice they made could either propel them forward or push them back into the shadows they both so desperately wanted to escape. Maria felt the gravity of the moment settle over her like a fog. The air was electric, and each passing second hinted at the choices that loomed ahead. Jonathan's eyes bore into hers, swirling with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. This was their moment, but what did that truly mean? We're standing on the edge, Jonathan, she urged, wishing to spark his determination further. The fervor in her voice contrasted with the lingering tension from the man's demand. This is more than just about you or me. It's about redefining what's possible. He nodded, but the weight of obligation still clung to him. The demands are distractions, Maria interjected. They're not your reality unless you let them be. You have a chance to redefine that reality, to reclaim your story. The firmness in her voice reflected her own need for self-actualization, the path she had just begun to navigate. As she spoke, Maria realized that this moment was also a revelation for her. The courage she felt in challenging Jonathan was layered. It unearthed her own fears of inadequacy and the self-doubt that often flared up. She was not merely supporting Jonathan. She was confronting her own journey. What do you really want? Jonathan's question hung between them like an anchor, forcing Maria to turn the inquiry inward. What was her ultimate goal? Was this newfound allyship a stepping stone toward a future where she could stand unshackled by the past? I want to stand tall in the face of expectation, Jonathan. I want to reshape my narrative along with yours, she confessed, the weight of her admission lifting the corners of her mouth. However, doubts crept in as fear whispered her uncertainties. Would Jonathan ultimately choose the path of obligation, or could their shared aspiration bind them firmly together? Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of his internal struggle. Can we even take on what's coming, Maria? This isn't just about ambitions. It's about risks too. What if we fail? Failure is merely a step along the path, she replied, newfound resolve gaining momentum in her speech. The real failure would be to shrink back into lives crafted by others, carrying the weight of their expectations. Each word tasted of empowerment as she scanned his face, searching for an old conviction that might ignite below the uncertainty. Jonathan's brows furrowed, but the tension in his shoulders began to ease. What if I step away from the life they expect of me? What if, he paused as a thought crystallized, I choose to step forward instead of backward? Then you'll be embracing your true self, Maria encouraged, her heart pounding at the audacity of their uncharted exploration. Jonathan turned away for a moment, his body language reflective as he processed the possibilities before him. The silence stretched, and Maria could almost hear the ticking band of responsibilities tightening around him. She took a deep breath and planted her feet firmer on the ground. This wasn't just an opportunity for Jonathan to pivot. It was a juncture for her own awakening. What if confronting these shadows allowed her to step into her own light as well? A flicker of determination flashed in Jonathan's eyes, and Maria sensed he was awakening to something deeper within himself. A sliver of hope illuminating the weight in his chest. "Okay," he said finally, voice steadier. "Let us lay our plans out. Let us not let anything distract us." But just as they started grappling with potential strategies for defining their new narrative, a sharp knock echoed through the air, abruptly severing the fragile moment of clarity. Both of them froze, the jubilant sense of possibility collapsing once again into trepidation as the door rattled under another insistence. "Jonathan!" The voice on the other side was urgent, a potent reminder of every lingering expectation and responsibility he had attempted to sidestep. The storm was indeed not receding. Maria's heart raced. This was the pivotal moment for them both. Would they confront the chaos together, preserving their newfound convictions under duress? Or would they allow it to push them further apart, unearthing all the fears they had just begun to acknowledge? With a shared glance, they understood the stakes had escalated. The time had come to face not just the man outside the door, but the demons they had both avoided for far too long. This was no longer solely Jonathan's decision, it was theirs together. As they moved towards the door, Maria felt the tension curl within her, sparked by the awakening bravery and determination that both haunted and invigorated her. Would they seize the moment? Or would they falter before the looming reality? The door stood between them and a world that demanded so much, a world that could either malign their ambitions or set them free. With the unexpected tension thickening the air, Maria prepared herself to confront the demands awaiting them. The real question lingered. Could they embrace the uncertainty and convert it into their strength? Or would they retreat to what was comfortable and well-known once more? Maria inhaled deeply, the urgency of the moment sharpening her senses. She exchanged a glance with Jonathan, their determination palpable, yet uncertainty loomed thick in the air. The anxiety from what awaited on the other side of the door pressed against her chest like an iron weight. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but firm enough that it conveyed a fierce resolve. He nodded slowly, though the tremor in his hands revealed the fragility of their newfound courage. They had just begun to grasp the outlines of their ambitions, dared to sketch a daring future together. But before them loomed a past dictated by others, and the man outside was an embodiment of that past, a relentless force demanding compliance. "On three," Jonathan suggested, attempting to inject a semblance of normalcy into the tension that simmered around them. Her heart raced in anticipation. 1, 2, 3. Together they swung the door open, revealing George, Jonathan's father, a figure whose very presence draped the room in stale expectations and obligation. "Jonathan," George began, his voice commanding and devoid of warmth, "this has gone on long enough. You need to come home. Your mother is worried sick." The authoritative tone sent a shiver down Maria's spine. It was a familiar cry of tradition clashing against the bond they had begun to forge. She felt Jonathan's arm tense beside her, embodying the struggle between familial loyalty and personal desire. "Dad, it's not that simple," Jonathan replied, discomfort creeping into his voice. The tension in his shoulders returned, like a soldier falling back into formation against his will. "It's exactly that simple," George shot back, his gaze sweeping between them, calibrating the angle of their unity. Expectations are not merely suggestions, they're obligations. This is your life, and it's about time you start living it on your own terms. Maria watched as Jonathan flinched not from fear, but recognition of the reality he had been sidestepping. With each word George spat, he renewed the familiar cycle of doubt that weighed heavy in Jonathan's chest, a reminder of the countless times he battled against his father's demands. As Jonathan continued to grapple with the implications of such pressure, Maria felt an instinctual urge to intervene. This was not merely a confrontation. It was a moment ripe for clarity. Slowly, she stepped into the fray, her own voice taking shape amidst the confrontation. "Mr. Fisher," Maria began, her tone calm but resonant. "With all due respect, your son is not just living up to expectations. He is choosing to embrace a future molded by his own ideals and aspirations. Don't you want that for him?" George's brows furrowed, incredulity flashing across his face. "And what does that future entail? Chasing whims and fantasies? He has responsibilities, Maria." Her heart pounded louder, but she pressed on. But what if those responsibilities hold him back? What if stepping into his own light benefits not only him but you too? Wouldn't that change the dynamic of responsibility? A charged silence enveloped them as everyone absorbed her words. She could sense Jonathan's gaze on her, a mixture of admiration and apprehension dancing across his features. This was the intersection of their paths, her own journey of self-definition intertwining with Jonathan's struggle to break free. "Maria," he said quietly, "you don't have to do this." But she wasn't backing down. "Yes, I do," she countered, her resolve crystallizing into a tangible force. "We both need to confront what's holding us back." Jonathan clenched his jaw, deliberating the gravity of her words. Would this be the moment he chose to step beyond fear? The door of possibilities swung wide, yet also threatened to collapse under the weight of pressure. George stood silent, his expression shifting from disbelief to contemplation as the reality of their determination began to take root. This wasn't merely a rebellion against expectations. It was an assertion of individuality. For Maria, this was her defining moment, carving out a space where her voice rang loud and clear against adversity. She was awakening, not just for herself, but for Jonathan too, and perhaps for anyone else unwittingly suffocated by the weight of others' designs. The air hummed with tension, the quiet anticipation of a pivotal decision lingering on the edge of a breath. Jonathan glanced at her, and she saw the mirror of her own uncertainties, yet behind it lay an ember of newfound resolve. Could they finally forge their own destinies amidst the chaos that demanded otherwise? The uncertainty lingered thickly, and in that moment of silence, Maria realized they could either break free together or crumble beneath the weight of expectation. How they chose to move forward in this moment would determine not just their paths, but how profoundly they could alter their parallel stories. As Jonathan opened his mouth to speak, a sudden thought ignited within Maria. The next challenge loomed, not just from the outside world but from within themselves. Could they both muster the courage not just to confront their fears but redefine the very essence of their identities? Maria held her breath, attuned to the silence that hung heavily between them, feeling both the weight of Jonathan's potential breakthrough and the palpable tension radiating from George. She understood then that this moment wasn't merely a family dispute, it was a crossroads not just for Jonathan, but for them both. The uncertain future that expanded beyond this conversation beckoned, yet it felt fraught with peril. As Jonathan's gaze flickered back to George, Maria focused on her own thoughts, dissecting the layers of her emotions. Was she merely a catalyst in their drama? Or did she possess an intrinsic strength that demanded recognition? The question encircled her mind, amplifying her resolve. "Dad, I need to be honest with you," Jonathan began, a tremor in his voice as he waded deeper into uncharted waters. "I can't keep living my life under your shadow or anyone else's. I'm ready to pursue what I really want." The fervor in his tone surged forward, battling the bleakness that his father's expectations imposed. George's expression hardened, but Maria noticed a flicker of something softer simmering beneath. Perhaps, just perhaps, he felt the churning eddies in his son's heart. With every word Jonathan articulated, Maria sensed the familiar fears receding from Jonathan's shoulders, replaced by a burgeoning desire to assert his autonomy. "Then tell me," George pressed, his voice clipped, "what is it that you truly want?" It was a question heavy with a challenge, a provocation that hung palpably in the air. "Dad, I want to start my own business, a bakery," Jonathan said, the confession rolling off his tongue as if it were a long-held secret finally unveiled. "I love baking. I want to create something of my own, not just follow the family line down a path that doesn't belong to me." Maria's heartbeat quickened in sync with Jonathan's bold declaration. She could feel the undercurrent of his passion, igniting the personal sparks of her own aspirations. This was not just about resisting the status quo. It was about giving space for dreams that shimmered quietly in the recesses of their minds. George's brows knit tightly together, calculating the implications of Jonathan's ambition. "You think that baking is a viable career choice? You'll struggle without the stability of a real job," he retorted, skepticism dripping from his words. Jonathan's jaw set firmly, his resolve crystallizing like glass. "I'm willing to take that risk, but only if I can pursue it on my own terms. Not because I'm trying to defy you, but because it's what I need to do to grow." A profound silence fell, and with it came an introspective shift within Maria. In this moment, Jonathan was not merely fighting against George, he was defining himself against all previous confines. She realized her own journey towards self-worth mirrored his, deepening her conviction that they could carve out a new reality together. Yet the roaring silence in the room had a bitter edge, laced with the uncertainty of Jonathan's endeavor. Could their combined strength be enough to withstand George's looming reproof? The prospect of rejection or acceptance danced perilously in the balance. "Do you think you can just abandon responsibilities?" George said, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. But Maria sensed an intricate mix of fear and protectiveness in his stance, indicative of a man grappling with letting his son step into the wilds of independence. "Yes," Jonathan replied, unwavering. "I need freedom to discover my potential, even if it comes with uncertainties." Maria felt an unexpected wave of admiration for Jonathan. Despite the shadows of doubt threatening to encase them, he was grasping for truth amid chaos, reminiscent of her own struggles to confront her past decisions and carve an identity outside her comfort zone. "Every great success comes from taking risks, Mr. Fisher," Maria added, stepping further into the conversation, amplifying the undercurrents of bravery she felt surging within her. What if Jonathan's happiness, which stems from pursuing his passion, ultimately strengthens your family's legacy instead of breaking it? George stood tense, eyes darting between the two of them, his mind entangled in a web of internal conflict. In that moment, Maria realized it was their combined courage that could tip the scales toward acceptance. But would this stand spark a transformation in George, a willingness to embrace shadows instead of fearing them? As the seconds stretched, a question lingered like a tightrope above a chasm. Would they find the strength to acknowledge their truths together? Or would the expectations tether them back into darkness? With Jonathan's voice echoing through her thoughts, Maria couldn't help but wonder if they had begun a path of genuine transformation, not merely for themselves, but as a testament to the unyielding human spirit. The question loomed in her mind. What would they discover about themselves next as they faced the inevitable trials of turning dreams into reality? Maria's gaze remained locked on Jonathan, each heartbeat echoing her newfound commitment to both him and herself. This was their moment, a delicate pivoting point that could shape the course of their lives. But George's silence had morphed into a battlefield of its own, and Maria felt the tension straining like a taut wire, ready to snap. "Jonathan," George finally spoke, his voice steady but laced with an edge. "You talk about passion as if it's the only thing that matters. Do you really think you can just chase a whimsical dream without any forethought or planning?" Every word struck Maria like a drumbeat, each note resonating with the struggle that had been buried deep within her. She recalled her own transformation, the way she had fought for her place in a world that often smothered individual aspiration under layers of expectation. It was enlightening to witness Jonathan carving out a path, one she was now determined to forge alongside him. "Love can propel us," Jonathan countered, his voice steady, "but responsibility doesn't vanish. I want to infuse both into what I create. It won't be whimsical. It'll be my reality." His tenacity ignited something within Maria, a yearning to embrace her innate capacity for courage. George shifted, an uncharacteristic vulnerability flickering across his face. "You think this is easy? You jump into a bakery and expect it to succeed overnight? Why not?" Jonathan's gaze blazed with a fire Maria knew all too well. Plenty of businesses thrive from passion, Dad. I'm willing to start small. Bake and sell at local markets. I want to build something real brick by brick. Maria could see George's heart wavering. A tempest of doubt waging war against love. Did he truly want to stifle Jonathan's ambition? Or was he simply paralyzed with fear of what their choice might mean? She sensed they were navigating the same terrain, he, as a father tethered to tradition, and she, as a woman rising from the ashes of conformity. Look, Dad, Maria interjected, leaning forward, you don't have to throw away everything you've built as a family in order to embrace new ideas. Instead of opposing change, why not support it? Your son is willing to fight for his dreams. Isn't that worth something to you? The transparency and earnestness behind her words cut through the air. A moment of stillness enveloped them, an almost palpable quiet as George searched both their faces for the key to unlocking his barricaded heart. Does that mean you're asking for my blessing? George's voice wavered, a hint of anguish slicing through the tense atmosphere. Not just a blessing, Dad, Jonathan replied, determination radiating from him. I want your understanding. Your support would mean everything. Maria felt a rush of emotion. This was not merely a confrontation between a father and son. It was a love story wrapped in the delicate layers of personal emergence. Both Jonathan and George were on the cusp of discovering their own identities, and she envisioned herself as a guiding light in this crucible of change. The silence hung for what felt like an eternity. She could see the wheels turning in George's mind as he grappled with the transitory beauty of this moment. Would he have the strength to step off the precipice of fear and into the unknown with them? The tension broke as George breathed deep, glancing between them, and the weight of his decision was evident in the tense lines of his face. His next words hung in the air, poised to bridge the chasm between tradition and transformation. But would acceptance of Jonathan's aspirations trigger a shift in George's own outlook, inviting him to embrace risk and vulnerability? Maria resonated with the power pulsing deep within. This was her moment too. As they stood yearning for connection, she couldn't help but question how she would further take command of her path, spurred by the echoes of Jonathan's dreams and their ensuing metamorphosis. What revelations awaited her in the wake of their unfolding choices? Would she find the courage to proclaim her own aspirations as they ventured into the world beyond? The stillness shattered with George's hesitant acceptance, a soft tremor shifting the air. Fine, he murmured, his voice now a tentative bridge rather than an imposing wall. If you really believe in this, then perhaps I can support you after all. Jonathan broke into a smile, a moment of triumph illuminated in his eyes, while Maria felt a sharp brightness within her heart. Still, the words lingered like smoke. Change doesn't always embrace you back. Days slipped by like shadows as the echoes of the previous night transformed into the rhythms of their lives. Maria found herself drawn deeper into her own thoughts. With Jonathan chasing his dreams, she sensed a powerful urge to awaken her own. The concept of a bakery was idyllic, a sweet escape into nurturing creativity, but it sparked ideas of her own that had long been buried under layers of practicality and responsibility. The mornings were now filled with flour dust and the ambient warmth of ovens, a small revolution unfolding as Jonathan baked, experimenting with flavors and techniques. Each loaf baked was a small testament to courage. It was a living testament to heartfelt passion fused with practical planning. Yet, each whisper from the back of her mind, a reminder of her stifled ambitions, compelled her to look deeper, to confront her reflection in the kitchen windows. What did she truly want? With the path before her uncharted, Maria grappled with a haunting dilemma rooted in self-doubt. Here she was, standing side by side with Jonathan, who had taken the plunge. Her walls of expectation grew heavier, threatening to ensnare her. Maria, Jonathan called one afternoon, interrupting her internal spiral, I want you to help with this. He gestured toward a batch of cookies cooling on the counter. Help me create a menu. Your eye for detail could really elevate what I'm doing. How could she? Doubts crashed down like a tidal wave. What could she possibly offer? But there was a glimmer of tenacity igniting deep inside her. Her hesitation faded slowly. Could she lend her skills to something beautiful? With a deep breath, Maria crossed the kitchen and stood beside him, their collaborative energy weaving through the space like a warm breeze. As they drafted a menu, ideas flowed between them, vibrant and potent lavender-infused cupcakes, salted caramel eclairs, and dark chocolate truffles. Each suggestion lifted a veil of her hesitance and illuminated forgotten dreams lurking behind her reality of to-do lists and late-night deadlines. She found herself laughing again, exploring choices usually reserved for wishful thinking. Yet, as the hours slipped into the evening, a tightness gripped her chest. Would introducing her own visions muddy their united front? And how would George react to her aspiration, this merging of paths? They were treading in that delicate zone of blending ambitions, a raw dance of aspirations intertwined. At night, when the bakery quieted and light filtered gently through the curtains, she grabbed her notebook, a secret ally hidden from prying eyes, and began to jot down her ideas. Crafting her own personal roadmap felt exhilarating, yet it was accompanied by an undercurrent of fear. What if her dreams faltered? What if she wasn't as talented as she hoped? Just as Maria found her footing, her phone buzzed with a message that sent a shudder down her spine. It was an invitation, an opportunity with a local art gallery for emerging artists, a chance to showcase her photography and design work. A flicker of excitement battled a tsunami of anxiety, each pulse reminding her of her own integrity and the risk of failure. The moment of truth approached, and she stood at the edge of her decision, aware that both Jonathan's journey and her own were evolving simultaneously, forging a path that would test every ounce of her strength and creativity. Would she dive into this new venture wholeheartedly or cling to the safety of self-doubt? An answer loomed ahead, ready to be unearthed. As she pondered, Maria realized that this was not merely about ambition anymore. It was about identity. Would she find the voice to speak up when it mattered most? The door to her personal transformation was ajar, but only she could decide whether to step inside or retreat into the comfort of the past. Uncertainty thrummed through her, and as she readied herself to take a leap, an unsettling thought crept in. Perhaps Jonathan's journey had just awakened something within her that had been dormant for far too long. Would she embrace change alongside him, or would fear silence her yearning once more? Standing at the threshold of a new existence, Maria felt the dual weight of excitement and apprehension press against her chest. Jonathan's endeavor had ignited courage within her, prompting determination to surface like a phoenix from the ashes. However, the luminous visions of her own aspirations danced just beyond her reach, still clouded by self-doubt. The days rolled into weeks, each morning spent in their shared bakery overflowing with scents of fresh bread and sweet confections. Jonathan's journey towards entrepreneurship had gradually transformed their lives, bringing a vibrant energy to the once predictable routine. Yet Maria's ambition remained subdued, wavering under the weight of her fears. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating flour particles swirling gently in the air, Maria caught Jonathan's gaze. "We need to expand. The local market is buzzing with excitement about our baked goods. But sharing this joy, this dream, makes me wonder if you're ready to help me grab hold of my own." He paused, wiping his hands on a towel as a curious smile graced his lips. "Absolutely. What do you envision?" Jonathan's enthusiasm sparked a flame of determination within her, and for the first time, the murky waters of self-doubt began to clear. "I've been given an opportunity to showcase my photography at a local art gallery," she revealed, a tentative thrill coursing through her as she spoke. "It combines my eye for detail with my creativity inspired by the life we're building here." Jonathan's eyes gleamed with pride. "That's amazing, Maria. You must seize it. Your passion should take center stage just as much as ours does." A sense of hope swelled within her, entwining with lingering fears that still whispered discouragement. "But what if, no what ifs," he interrupted gently yet firmly. "You deserve this chance. Our journeys are our shared stories, but they are also our individual ones." Stirred by Jonathan's unwavering support, Maria felt a ripple of empowerment rushing through her veins, invigorating her spirit. As they collaborated on their respective ventures, a newfound resolve emerged in her heart, reinforced by every loaf they baked and every idea they exchanged. Encouraged, Maria began preparing for her exhibition, crafting a portfolio that reflected her identity, capturing vibrant snapshots of their bakery, her children, and poignant moments that told a story of resilience. Each image she created became a brushstroke on the canvas of her existence, a testament to her growth and evolution as a person. As the day of the exhibition loomed closer, another wave of self-doubt threatened to inundate her newfound confidence. What if others didn't resonate with her work? What if George didn't see her contributions as significant? But Maria pushed back against the tide. Recognizing that true success wasn't defined solely by validation from others, it stemmed from her own belief that she could stand proudly transformed. On the night of the gallery exhibition, dim lights caught the frames of her captured moments, each image echoing heartbeats of her own reality. Jonathan stood beside her, an unwavering pillar of support. Her heart raced as she approached the delicate display, feeling strength surge within her. "Maria!" called out a familiar voice from the audience. It was George. He stood with uncertainty etched in his features, his gaze fixed on her artistry. Maria's breath caught, a mix of anxiety and hope mingling in her chest. Would he understand the journey that led her here? "Your work is beautiful," he finally said, his voice laced with warmth. "I can see what it means to you." Gratitude washed over her, illuminating a path toward acceptance she had never dared to imagine for him. "That means more than you know, George," Maria replied, her voice steady and sincere. "Pursuing this has helped me find a part of myself I didn't know was missing." As the evening unfolded, George engaged not only with Maria but also with Jonathan, their conversations ripe with possibilities that stretched beyond the boundaries of past expectations. Maria absorbed the blooming dynamic, realizing they were all knitting the fabric of their identities through mutual trust and understanding. In the weeks that followed, both the bakery and her artistic endeavors flourished, buoyed by a spirit of collaboration and comprehensive support. Word of their baked creations spread like wildfire, and soon, they were featured in local publications and attracted the interest of community influencers. Maria not only celebrated Jonathan's success, but also her own transformation as an artist, experiencing the satisfaction of fulfilling her aspirations while watching Jonathan thrive alongside her. Together they had dismantled old narratives, carving fresh pathways dotted with new learnings. Months later, as they hosted a soft opening for a new section in their bakery, offering artisanal cookies and pastries alongside an exhibit of Maria's work, their shared laughter filled the air. George stood proudly in the corner, observing the vibrant atmosphere, embracing both their dreams and the reality they had built with hope and collaboration. In that moment, Maria smiled as she recognized her growth and authority in claiming her path. She had arrived at a junction where reflection met acceptance. It was no longer about adhering to expectations. It was about navigating their lives together, not as separate entities, but as resilient forces forging their own destinies. As they celebrated into the evening, Jonathan leaned in, whispering, "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Maria knew that it was indeed the dawn of a new chapter. Individual aspirations had interconnected, building a foundation brighter than they had ever imagined. Now they could embrace challenges and victories alike, knowing they would pursue each dream together, always striving, always growing. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support creators bringing these transformative journeys to light. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. We want to hear from true fans who value personal growth. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of inspiration through extraordinary tales of overcoming adversity. Don't wait even one more second to share.